Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Chatham Select Board meeting of August 2nd, 2022. Please let the record show that the meeting started promptly at 5:33. Pursuant to Governor Baker's July 16th, 2022 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension of his March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, until March 31st, 2023, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted via in-person and remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 230-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. And our first order of business is I will call a roll call. Mr. Nicastro?
Present.
Ms. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Shell?
Present.
Mr. Metters?
Present.
And the chair is present as well. Thank you for that. First order of business this evening is to approve and adopt the minutes of July 26th, 2022. I'll entertain any edits, comments, suggestions. I see Mr. Nicastro poised.
Move to
Press
approve.
the button.
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Nicastro.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, on page 3, these are really typos, I think, on the third. It's the first large paragraph in the third line. It says, as the restaurant is no serving breakfast. I think that means now.
Yep.
Now serving breakfast. And then in the next paragraph on the motion, I think the 8 o'clock is missing, 8 o'clock a.m. Monday through Saturday. And then the next edit is on page 8. I would like to add, in the thank yous up at the top, the following, and to Ted Whitaker, who recently resigned from the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee.
Yeah, good get, Dean. Thank you, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Shell.
Yeah, this is more in the nature of an editorial suggestion at the top of page 5. In the second and third lines, the end of that, what the town staff believes, is a little confusing where that clause is. So I would propose in the second line after the word "and," to shellfishing and, I would insert the following, comma, based on the town staff's belief that it is justified, comma, and then pick up, her hope is that they may remain open year-round rather than being closed during the boating season, and then put a period at the end of season.
I think that's perfect. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Yeah. Sean, you get that? You good? Okay. Anything else? Okay, the minutes have been moved and seconded. Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nicastro?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well, and that vote is unanimous. Public announcements and agenda item requests. Any agenda item requests or public announcements from the board this evening? Any, and out there is nobody sitting in here. Are there any public announcements and or agenda item requests from those that are online this evening? Okay, hearing and seeing none, we'll move on. Oh, Mr. Shell.
If I could, I don't know if this fits exactly in either of those, but this morning I attended the Fire and Rescue Squad's awards ceremony, and I just want to add a public commendation to that process, to that event. It was terrific. It was Chatham family to the core, and it was wonderful to be there. Awards passed out to individuals as well as teams, life-saving awards. A couple of police officers received awards. It was a great thing to be at. So
Super.
Thank you to those who participated.
Yeah, I'm glad you could attend. Yeah, thank you. That's great. Yep. Anything else from the board? Anything else from the folks online? Okay. Move on to the next agenda item is the drinking water testing and pumping update and other pending water items. And we have Mr. Temple. I see that Mr. Temple is online, and you will be so recognized. Welcome, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Select Board members. Tom Temple, Director of Public Works. I'd like to start off with the pumpage. We did get the remaining results for the month of July. Our pumpage rate is 15.7 for the month, slightly higher than this same time last year. We normally range between 2.9 million gallons per day to 3.1. We're holding right around 3.3 million gallons per day. So again, slightly higher than we have been in the past. We hit the low-level alarm 3 times this last week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. As you know, we're in a regional level 1 drought that was put into effect. 60% of what we use for faucets, toilets, showers is the water that's used indoors, and they're recommending, the EPA is recommending that we limit the outdoor watering to handheld hoses for watering and no irrigation use. So, and they're looking to do one day per week, and limiting between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. I'm not sure if this is something the board wants to discuss before I go into the other agenda items on there, or if we want to hold fast to where we are. I do know that the town of Harwich has changed theirs only to handheld watering. There's no irrigation use at this point. The town of Brewster, they're on odd even days still, and they're unlimited on odd even. But it's my understanding, talking to their water division through our water division, that they're looking to meet with their advisory board for the Water and Sewer Advisory Board to discuss some change in the restrictions. So if you'd like, I can continue with my agenda items, or we can discuss if there's any changes that you want to make towards this.
Yeah, any comments? I have with Ms. Davis, and then Mr. Nacastro, then myself.
Yeah, I saw that Harwich had proposed their water ban, and it was hand watering only, midnight to 8 a.m. and then 5 to 9 p.m. I'd really like to make a motion that we adopt that water restriction as well. We're really dry here, and we had water usage up this month, which I was really surprised to see. So either people aren't adhering to the water restrictions, or we just have an abundance of usage because of the amount of people that are in town. So I'm just going to put that motion forward.
So if I might, Ms. Davis, the motion is to ban irrigation and have handheld watering only. How many times a week? Once a week?
I'd like to follow the guidelines that Harwich has adopted.
Tom, those are what?
That's once a week
For hand watering of plants?
for hand watering.
Of hydrangea that are begging for water. You look at them and they're sad and they're all messed up.
Mr. Chair, hydrangeas are a water suck. There's no doubt about it. But they are resilient, and they will bound back.
They will. Okay, I haven't heard.
Second.
Okay, I heard a second. Okay, Mr. Nacastro, comments, suggestions?
Well, I guess I have to address the motion that's on the table. I don't think I can support it tonight, because I don't think we have sufficient notice to the public in terms of how the agenda item is worded. It just says water testing and pumping update and other pending water items. There's no recommendation in the memo. So I think the public hasn't had sufficient notice. We may very well want to do it. We're going to meet on the 16th. We're going to make appointments to the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee tonight. And it may be possible for them to have a meeting within these next 2 weeks. If we have to do something on an emergency basis, next week we don't meet because we have the summer residence meeting, I think.
On the 9th, yes.
Tuesday night.
Yeah.
But we could have an emergency meeting if need be. So that's my only objection to taking a vote this evening. But it would be nice if that committee could meet in the interim and give us their take on it, as is the case, I guess, in Brewster. But
Right.
I just wanted to say that.
Yep, thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
Corey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have to agree with Mr. Nacastro on the mechanics. I think I wish we could have had this agenda item worded with some action availability, but I do think we need to tread lightly based on some other criticisms we've had in the past on other agenda items. So regretfully, I think our hands are tied on taking action on this because it's not specified, it doesn't give us any proper notice. So it's just the mechanics. I mean, outside of that, I think philosophically it's something I'd like to consider, but I think our hands are a little bit tied on this one, regretfully.
Okay, thank you. I'll make sure it's on our agenda on the 16th, if that's okay.
Well, we have a
It's been
second
moved and
on,
seconded, so
yeah, it
we'll vote.
has. yeah.
Okay, so I'll call for a vote. Mr. Nacastro?
I'm going to vote abstain, because I don't want to, I think it's something we should consider,
I'm
but not
gonna-
tonight. So there's
All
a
right,
motion.
so,
I will put it on the-
Mr. Chair, in order for us not to put anybody in a difficult position, I will rescind my motion.
Okay. And then I'll make the commitment to get it on the agenda in our next formal meeting, or before if we think it needs to be. Because I think the point made about having new folks on the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee being voted in tonight is important, and it's important that they meet and come forward with a recommendation. But I mean, I think we're all very attuned to how dry everything is, and I'm concerned with the 3 alarms this last week, the low water alarms versus 1, I think, the entire month prior, I think, Tom. So, I mean, I'd like to hear a little bit more about what are the conditions that lead to those low alarms. I think I know, but I'd like to hear it again, and I think it's important for the public to hear as well what gives rise to those low alarms.
Could I don't know whether this is appropriate, but is there some way we could have a sense of the board that this is something that, but for the procedural obstacle, it is important to request the public to observe what is likely to be a resolution adopted in the near future? Is that appropriate?
I think you just articulated, and I think it is appropriate, and I think you've heard from me at least, and from Corey, and from yourself, and from Ms. Davis, and from Mr. Nacastro, that but for the fact that it wasn't a consideration of a ban this evening, it would be on the agenda. So, Mr. Mayor.
And can I make a suggestion maybe, because I think this is going to be a conversation we might be having at every meeting moving forward, that we allow some flexibility in the agenda posting for review of the restrictions and, giving us an observation, giving us the opportunity to make adjustments as needed on each time we review this. I want to be as clear as possible because we may have to adjust, and we're only meeting every other week right now. So I want to give us as much opportunity to act on this and not deal with this, mechanical little hiccup we have tonight.
Mr. Nacastro.
What I hear Mr. Metters suggesting is that the agenda items in the future be specific enough to allow for that discussion. I'm okay with that. I just wanted to add, if Katie, after tonight's meeting, if you or the town manager could communicate with the vice chair of the Water and Sewer Committee, Ms. Aikman, to see if a meeting can be scheduled ASAP. We need to get the new people sworn in too. But I would have no problem with this board meeting next week sometime if we could, or even before then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I see that Dr. Duncanson's hand is up, and Tom wants to speak. Oh, Bob, why don't we go to you and then back to Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to provide some clarity on what was being discussed. The Harwich ban is midnight to 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. hand watering only. It, however, is not limited to just one day a week. It's the recommendation from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs under the state's drought task force that is recommending outdoor watering from 5 p.m. to 9 a.m. and that be only one day a week. So I just wanted to provide that clarity between what the state is recommending and what Harwich has implemented. So thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Mr. Temple.
Yeah, and we didn't have this information prior to the agenda being sent to the select board. This is something that we received on August 1st, so that's why I'm including it in our meeting tonight, just to bring you up to speed what we have learned from August 1st. So if we needed to make a decision, we could make that decision. To touch back on the low-level alarms, when that happens, like I said, we're down to elevation 80 on the tank and 79, I think it was on Wednesday. That tank is 103, so it takes us probably 12 or 13, 14 hours to get that tank totally back up to where it needs to be. So it's a long process, and if we have any issues with any of the other wells for whatever reason, if we have a mechanical issue where we have to pull one offline, it puts us in a real bad position, and I just want to make sure that everybody's aware that these things do happen. We could end up having a water main break or something, and if we have those low-level alarms going off, and that then becomes also a fire suppression need that we won't have. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows the full picture and why I brought that up tonight. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So if need be, we'll have a meeting prior to 2 weeks from now if need be, and we'll get a beat on. Tom will continue to monitor the levels of water. Please keep us in the loop on alarms and water levels. I mean, obviously the board's very concerned, so let's stay ahead of it. Okay, thanks for that report, and why don't you continue with the rest of it? Thanks.
No, thank you.
Yep.
Well 4 is fully activated. It's pumping approximately 17 hours per day like all the other wells. Well 4 is about 600 gallons per minute. Our next quarterly sampling is October 7th. On well 5, the temporary treatment fences are being installed around the filter pad and the backwash area. All equipment has been delivered for well number 8 modifications. Currently, the differential pressure readings on the temporary filters remain low, which is where it should be. Schedule-wise, well 8 modifications, remaining on site and begin their work on August 1st. They started, so things are looking good there. Well 5 and 8, the permanent treatment facility, SRF applications are being submitted to DEP on or before August 12th deadline. Water treatment plant design drawings were submitted to a third-party consultant, and we're hoping to have those back by August 10th. Weston & Sampson continues to work on the 60% design, logistics associated with the final designs. Scheduling-wise, Weston & Sampson was supposed to be receiving the Blue Leaf Inc. Draft pilot study report. They were supposed to receive it on July 30th. I'm not sure. I couldn't get in contact to find out if that actually happened yet. Sorry about that. I was going to try to get that today. Also, Weston & Sampson is preparing a SRF application, like I said, that's due before the 12th, and we're hoping to have the 60% design submittal to the town by August, mid-August to late August of 2022. Wells 10 and 11, the contractor, we're waiting for 2 quotes from 2 different contractors for the 12-inch water main for Mill Hill. We had a pre-construction on July 27th with Robert Biauer, who was the contractor. He started submitting his shop drawings to Weston & Sampson for their review. We've told them that we're looking for a 3-week outlook, look ahead for the project, and we want to make sure that we're maintaining it on the website and getting that information to everybody in a timely fashion. Once we make a decision on who will be installing the 12-inch water main on Mill Hill Road, we plan to have a meeting with T.W. Nickerson, CC Construction, who is a sewer contractor, Robert Biauer, who was doing the wells 10 and 11, as well as the neighbors and staff, so that way we can make sure that everybody's on the same page. That's all I have. If you have any other questions, I certainly can answer them, or hope to answer them.
I have a geography question. If I go down Mill Hill Road and just keep going straight into TW's, where are wells 10 and 11? Do I go straight? Do I go up around TW's like?
You're going to take a right just after.
Go ahead.
Do you have a picture of that, Leah?
Okay.
I don't, but you're going to drive past the piles of wood The piles of wood will be on your left. You're going to drive past them and then into the site that way. The wells are to the right and up in the back.
Okay,
You can actually see them out there. They're 36-inch steel casings
Yeah,
coming out of the
okay.
ground.
I made a lame attempt one time to find wells 10 and 11.
It's tricky.
And I
It's
came up dry.
definitely
Anyway, and I went up high to the right, and the stump dump was down here to the left, and I thought I was near it, but maybe I wasn't.
You
Anyway,
find them best by the trails, because the drill rigs that put them in did leave some trails.
okay, thanks, Leah. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Tom or Leah or anybody? Okay, thank you, Tom. Please keep us close. Anything that concerns you, let us know. Keep us close.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you, Bob. Okay, the next item on our agenda is our public comments on our business agenda. Our business agenda this evening is consideration of the removal of a no parking sign in front of the Candy Manor, the acceptance of a donation of a watercolor of the town offices, an update on the fisherman's storage area that Mr. Metters requested, I believe, just the last time we met, appointments of election officials, police officers at polling locations, and committees and boards and commissions. We're signing our state primary warrant, and then we're also going to convene a meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees to accept minutes, and then we will go immediately into an executive session after we convene that meeting. So, any comments from the public on our business agenda this evening, knowing kind of in advance what we're going to discuss? Anybody out there that would like to weigh in on our business agenda in advance of its consideration here by the board? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, the first up will be a consideration to request to remove a no parking sign the hatching in front of the Candy Manor, which is 484 Main Street. And I did see Mary online. I think she's still there. Mary, yeah, there she is. Mary, you want to tee this up for us, please?
Yeah,
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everyone. I will be brief. So I'm here tonight to ask that we bring in, back into inventory, parking inventory, the two, I believe it's about two parking spaces in front of the Candy Manor. So we would just need to take down the no parking signs and remove the hatch marks that are in the parking areas, and put those spaces back into available parking inventory.
All right, Mary, thank you. It's okay with the proprietors at Candy Manor? They're comfortable?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I had a conversation with Paige Piper and Robbie Carroll, and they are fine with them going back into inventory.
Super, thank you, Mary. Select Board, Mr. Nacastro.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the removal of the no parking sign and pavement hatching at 484 Main Street.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Metters, what say you?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Thanks, Mary, thanks for bringing this forward, appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
You bet. Next item is the acceptance of a donation of a watercolor of the town offices by Paige Pennypecker. Is Ms. Pennypecker out there in public land this evening? Well, Shauna, go ahead, please.
Ms. Pennypacker is off Cape and was not able to come down
Okay.
today, but she did want to offer the watercolor, which is part of her father's estate, who was the selectman here in town, to the town.
Yep, thank you so much, and thank you to the Pennypackers. It's lovely, it's a great rendition, great watercolor. Timmy was a selectman for many years. Well, anyway, from the Select Board.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Shell.
I move to accept the donation of a watercolor of the town offices at 549 Main Street by Howard L. Rich.
Second.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Shell.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well, and with bountiful thanks to Ms. Pennypacker. Thank you so much. It'll find a good place, good wall. Okay, next up. There you go. We have an update on the Fisherman's Storage Area relocation project. I believe that Dr. Duncanson is available this evening to To kind of get us up to speed, this was a request of Mr. Metters, I believe, at our last meeting.
Yes, thank you.
Yep, Mr. Duncanson.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, members of the board. Robert Duncanson, Director of Health and Natural Resources. So we've provided updates a couple of times to the Board of Selectmen on the Fisherman's Storage Area, which, as you all know, is currently located on airport property in the northwest corner of the airport. And per FAA regulations, that Fisherman's Storage Area has to be closed down because the FAA deemed it a wildlife attractant. And as you can imagine, wildlife, and especially avian wildlife, and planes don't always necessarily mix well together. So we've been working with the Airport Commission to find an alternative location for the airport storage area. We've been to the board on several occasions talking about alternative locations. And if you let me share my screen here quickly, I will show you the current proposed location. And this was a result of the meeting that we had with the board back in early May. You may recall originally we were looking at an area just off to the right of this figure, which was basically the gully between the wastewater treatment plant and the capped landfill. That was originally put forward as a possible area. However, it was very limited in the number of sites that we could accommodate there, as well as had some topography challenges, as well as part of the proposed area would have been immediately adjacent to the landfill cap. And so for a variety of reasons, that wasn't the best location. So we subsequently moved the location up the hill, if you will, up towards Middle Road, which is the road that's visible in the lower left-hand corner of the figure currently being shown. The white boxes, if you will, were various 5,000 square foot plots that could be provided. And based on subsequent discussions at that last board meeting, it was scaled back to roughly the area that's outlined in red here, which basically encompasses 3 5,000 square foot plots and a very limited access road coming in off Middle Road. So we subsequently brought that to our engineers. We received a proposal from GHD to take that basically from this concept that you see here to the next step, detailed engineering drawings and layout, where the fencing would be, where any gates would be, and whatnot. And based on that, received an estimate of roughly $200,000 for the project as a whole. That was recommended by the Board of Selectmen under Article 24 to the annual town meeting. And it was unanimously approved at town meeting for the tune of $200,000. We subsequently entered into a contract with GHD to do that engineering and permitting. And permitting is needed even though we're not in an area immediately adjacent to the landfill, the capped landfill. We are on a parcel which contains the capped landfill. So that entire site containing the capped landfill, the current transfer station, the harbor master storage area, which is visible in kind of the middle right of this figure, that is all one parcel. So even though we're not close to the capped landfill, it will still require DEP permitting. It is our intention that we will file what's known as a minor modification with DEP, and hopefully that will be the extent of DEP review. So as part of the packet that was included for you tonight, we did include the GHD proposal, which indicated the scope of work for the engineering and also a rough timeline for DEP permitting. Hopefully, if DEP approves this under the minor modification, the permitting will not be onerous. But if they did require more permitting, it could lengthen the process out. So right now, we have a meeting scheduled with the engineers for this Friday to look at their work so far and where they are in the engineering design phase, and then hopefully address any questions or comments they may have as they pull together the permit to be submitted to DEP. And that will hopefully happen later this month and start the permitting process, which optimistically could be completed sometime this fall. And that would allow us to get into construction, get the project out to bid, hopefully to have construction take place either later this fall or over the course of the winter. At the same time, I've been having conversations with Huntley Harrison, the airport commission chair, who's been coordinating with a number of the fishermen regarding closure of the existing site and then subsequent cleanup of that site. Mr. Harrison has drafted a letter to the various fishermen indicating that while the gate has been in place since late April, the airport commissioners had not locked it to date, but they will lock it, he's anticipating, starting on or around September 1st, having given the fishermen plenty of notice and plenty of time to remove any material that they want to retain from the existing site, everything else being deemed leftovers, and then would be removed from the site with the removal cost passed on to the fishermen if it can be identified exactly who the ownership is based on where it's located within the existing plots. And then if it can't be, it would be removed at airport and or town expense. And then hopefully we'll have a clean bill of health for the site. And in the meantime, we are aware that there may be a couple of fishermen, primarily lobstermen, who may need a temporary storage location depending on when the relocated site can be constructed. And we've been having conversations that the wastewater treatment plant could be a potential location on a temporary basis. If we need to do some storage of material, say, at the end of this fishing or lobstering season, if the new site is not ready to go. So we are having conversations about that, exactly who may need it, but primarily restricted to the lobstermen, just because of their large numbers of pots or traps where they would need to find a location to temporarily store them. So with that, I'm happy to try to answer any questions the board may have.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Bob. Mr. Metters.
Thank you, Dr. Bow. I very much appreciate all this background and update information. The only part of clarification that I do want to just have a conversation about is if we do need to have a temporary storage, when is that going to be determined? I only ask because I don't know if we have 1, 2, 3 potential lobstermen that this would apply to, hopefully making the transition relatively manageable. But I'm sure they need to plan. What if this were to not go through? The lobster pops take up a lot of space, so they got to plan accordingly. Right. So, what conversations have happened to those potential tenants? When is the determination going to be made whether this is or is not an option, and when are they going to be told the details? I guess, if possible.
I would expect that will happen over the next couple of weeks. Once we get the engineering plans and whatnot from GHD and we file the application with the state, then we'll have a better handle on how long this process may take. And then, we'll know whether or not conceivably, it could be open this fall or early winter. But I would suspect sometime, in the next 4 to 5 weeks, we'll have a better handle on that. And I know the airport chair has had discussions already, and he and I have had discussions about the potential for using the treatment plant as a temporary location. We would just really need to know how many, and I think as you indicated, we're really only talking about 2 to 3 lobstermen, and exactly how much space they would need. We have open space at the treatment plant where we could site lobster pot storage if necessary over the winter, and into the spring. Because I would assume that if we put them there temporarily, we would keep them there, and this is just my own opinion, we would keep them there, until they're redeployed in the waters next spring, early summer. We wouldn't be looking to make the fishermen store them temporarily at the treatment plant, say in, November, and then, make them move them again in February kind of thing.
Okay.
I think that would just be onerous on them. So I'm assuming that the temporary location, if we need to have a temporary location, it would be used for, this winter storage season. Then when they bring their pots in again, next year in the fall, they would go to the new location.
All right, thank you. No, I just look at it as, we've kind of made a promise to help with the transition from the one fisherman storage area to, the new one. I understand the little extension with the land cap. I totally understand where that's coming from. So if we could, and it looks like we have all the pieces to make our promise, be good on our promise. So I do appreciate the input. If, once we do get a determination if the wastewater treatment is the viable site, and if that's something we're going to offer, could we just get an update, via memo is fine. I just want to be kept in the loop of that. I very much, I have gotten some questions about where things stand, and I think we are heading in the right direction, and I hope we can just follow through with this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Corey. Mr. Shell?
Yeah, I'm sort of where Corey is, but I need a little clarification. And let me ask my question in a hypothetical way. Just assume for the moment that those three areas that you've identified, the 15,000 square feet that is the designated fisherman storage area for the future, let's assume that's ready right now. Are there people are there fishermen who have equipment and other items stored at the airport now who would move into that storage area right away, or are some of them going somewhere else? I'm a little confused as to whether the offer of temporary storage is really being made to everybody who has equipment or other items stored at the airport, and that's really what I'm trying to get a handle on.
Yeah, based on the conversation with the board of the select board at the last meeting, there was a sense that you really wanted to try to limit the storage to, like the lobstermen that have large numbers of pots and need a large expanse of an area to storage, and that was one of the reasons why the concept was cut down to really the 5,000 square foot storage areas, because you didn't feel that there was a need to provide, storage for every potential fisherman and, with every type of equipment, because that's one of the things that kind of got out of hand at the other site. Now, that's not to say that, if the site were ready tomorrow, could there be some of that other type of equipment that could be located there? Absolutely. And I think, once we have a better sense of timing, and the other thing that has to come into play here that, has been talked about a little bit, but nothing concrete yet, is potentially what the fee may be to use the storage area. Currently, a fisherman pays $600 a year for that storage area. Under the current procurement rules at the state level, we'd have to be looking more at market rate, as well as whether or not, the town, depending on how much money the town spends to create the area, will the town be trying to recoup any of that cost? And if so, over what time frame might you try to do it? Because all those things would then come into play in what the potential fee would be charged to use the storage area. And that hasn't been solidified yet because we haven't gotten definitive bids on the actual construction. So there's still a number of pieces of this that are kind of floating out there that I think need to get resolved before we know what the true absolute need or want is going to be from the fishing community.
Okay, it just, a follow-up comment. I think I'm a little fuzzy on exactly what the promise was. And I understand there's good reason. You just explained a number of reasons or items, criteria that make it a little fuzzy. But I would just like to be on the record that we try to accommodate as best we can for a situation that's being imposed as opposed to some other kind of reason for its occurring.
Thank you, Mr. Shell. I think that's the sentiment, behind our actions. Bob, I had a couple. GHD schedule says permit submittal August 26th, so you assume that. Then permit end period per schedule below, March 16th, 2023. So if that kind of schedule comes to happen, comes to reality, then, we're going to need a temporary location for those lobster pots. So the way I added it up is that the 2 required reviews might take 55 days in estimate. Then if we have to go through every single one of the reviews, it's 200 days. So, I would hope that the DEP review, as you noted, could be, accelerated and brief rather than jumping through all these hoops. It seems like kind of a rubber stamp deal, I would think, but anyway. Any thoughts there, Bob? Yeah.
No, that's exactly why GHD put that in there, so everybody would be clear on potentially what the worst case could be.
Yeah.
We fully expect that this is a minor modification, to use their wording. And the fact that we've moved it away from the cap landfill and we're not really doing any digging, if you will, on the site or anything like that. We're really just clearing the trees and moving the stumps and that kind of thing, and then basically putting down a hardened surface so you can drive on it. The DEP will really view that as very minor, very minimal, and we will be able to get the shortest review period. But we just wanted everybody to be aware that, under their regulations, it could extend out to that longer period if the DEP sees something that raises a concern with them.
Super, yeah.
But we truly hope it is the shorter of the 2.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thank you, Bob. Any other comments on Fisherman's Storage? Thanks for that update. Keep us in the loop, please, and as we progress here. And
Okay, will do.
appreciate the update, Dr. Bob. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Our next item on our agenda are appointments. We have a series of appointments. First up are the appointments of election officials for our midterm elections here.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself from this particular
Okay,
one.
Mr. Shell, yep, thank you, sir. All right. We have background here. I see Julie Smith online here. And Julie, if you'd like to tee this up, our town clerk, I'd appreciate that. Hi, Julie. I think you're on mute.
Unmuted this time. Sorry
Right.
about that.
Hi, Julie.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi there.
Hi.
This is our yearly appointment of election officials. This is the routine that we go through every year. We notify the Democrat and Republican town committees that we need a list from them, and working from those lists by before August 15th, but after July 15th, I have to submit these names to you and request that you go ahead and appoint the people on the list that I've submitted to you.
Okay. Mr. Nacastro.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the appointment of the election officials as recommended and submitted by the town clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Nacastro. And a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Any discussion? I don't believe there's, Mr. Metters, what say you?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. And thank you very much, Julie, for your timely submittal, and have fun at the polls. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Julie. Next up, we have police officers at the polling location, and this is Julie, this is you as well. So if you could walk us through that, that's kind of I think this is a change, huh?
This is a change. This came out of the Votes Act, which is the Chapter 92 of the Acts of 2022. Most of this law deals with early voting and most of the things that were passed for our COVID issues that we had in 2020 for voting, they were codified in this law. One new thing that was added was police officer assignments. Normally, the town clerk and the police chief would communicate with one another, and we would assign the number of police officers that we felt necessary for the polling locations for each election. This law puts that into your hands as the select board. So it gives you the authority to assign police officers or constables to polling places. I've asked that in my memo to you, that you vote to approve a sufficient number of police officers, but not less than one, at the polling location at every election therein, to preserve order and to protect the election officers and supervisors from any interference with their duties, and to aid in enforcing the laws relating to elections as required by Section 72 of Mass General Law, Chapter 54, which was changed, this new change, in Section 13 of Chapter 92 of the Acts of 2022. And then I concluded my memo asking that you move to designate the police chief the authority to assign the specific police officers according to the scheduling and availability. And that you would allow the police chief and I as town clerk to continue our process of acting together and deciding how many police officers at each specific election.
Yep, okay. Mr. Nacastro.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. I just had a question. So do you want the board to specify the number for police officers that is more than one, or?
I wasn't envisioning that. I just was envisioning at least one, because it depends on the size of the election.
Yeah.
If it's a presidential election, I normally would need two. I would need at least one outside and at least one inside.
So who?
A smaller election, I usually have one that can rotate from inside to outside. So as long as we have it, that at least one, to me, that would be sufficient.
So would the number be determined by you in consultation with the police chief? Is that how that would work? As long as we designate that there has to be at least one?
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
So thank you, Julie. So, Mr. Chairman, I move that the board approve the request of the town clerk relative to the select board appointment of police officers at polling locations and designating the authority, the police chief with the authority to assign specific police officers according to scheduling and availability as recommended by the town clerk.
Second.
Super. I did get a note from Chief Anderson saying he'd work closely with the town clerk and carrying out his duties as appointed by us. He understood there was a minor change in who's appointing it or who's suggesting, officers. So anyway, moved and seconded. Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Shell.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
And the chair says aye. And Julie, thank you very much. Carry on. Have fun.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, the next item, we have a series of appointments to committees and commissions this evening. I just make a brief statement that we had, it's just a wonderful array of candidates for all these commissions and committees this evening. Most notably, I think, the Water and Sewer, we had some excellent candidates, and we've had excellent candidates for all, and also for the Airport Commission. First up is the Airport Commission. We have 2 vacancies to June 30th, 2025. We have 4 candidates for 2 slots, if you will, until 2025. So we've interviewed 4 excellent candidates for the commission, and I'll accept a nomination.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move to appoint William Schultz to the Airport Commission until June 30, 2025, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
All right. And a second.
I'll second.
Mr. Nacastro.
So, Mr. Chairman, so just so we're clear on it, so we're taking these slot by slot. So we have the first slot. So Mr. Shell's motion that was seconded would be one of the nominations.
Yes.
Are you going to ask for other nominations for that particular?
We can have other nominations as well, but I thought, yes, we can do that. Yeah.
For that,
let's do that.
I nominate David Owens.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay, I think we should take a vote. We'll take Mr. Schultz, Mr. Shell,
Aye.
and Ms. Davis.
Mr. Chairman, I think you're supposed to ask for the names. Each select board member.
Oh, okay.
vote for the
I'm sorry.
person they're voting
I'm sorry, yeah.
So.
I thought you did do that,
clarity-
though.
For clarity, I just want to make, we have the first appointment, first slot.
Yep.
Right now, we have 2 candidates that we're voting on in this one slot. That's just for clarity purposes.
Oh, no,
Oh, no,
I
no, no.
thought we moved for one person for June 30th, 2025. That's what was seconded. And then we moved another person for 2025. So we've got 2 nominees, there are 2 openings.
Mr.
I
Chairman,
believe so.
just to clarify, and in due respect, because I was the one that initiated this process some years ago, that the process is to entertain nominations when there are
When there's more than-
competing candidates, to entertain nominations. And if there are multiple nominations for that slot, then to ask each board member to vote on their choice.
On that slot.
On that slot.
So we have 2 nominations for
So
one
I
slot.
would assume, if I were chair, that I would have taken Mr. Shell's motion as a nomination under the process that we have in place. That's how I understood. We haven't had this
I know we haven't.
occur recently, but this is what we've
Uh,
determined to do.
So we should vote for Mr. Shell's nomination?
No.
Okay,
You should-
that's,
you
and
should-
I misunderstand.
We should poll each member and ask whom you're voting for. And the candidate, the nominee that gets a majority will be the selected party. Isn't that correct, Shanna?
But I don't understand why, if that's the case, then it seems to me you have to have all 4 people.
Yeah.
I mean, selecting only 2 to have a vote, I mean, there's no logic to having a vote between 2 people as opposed to among 3 or 4.
Mr. Metters?
I'm just going to say, if you look back at past procedure over the last, well, at least 2015 since I've been on the board, when we have more candidates than slots, we look for nominations on the first opening. Sometimes it's only 1 person, sometimes it's 2, could be 3. And then we do a roll call on the names of that individual. And it could be a 2-2-1 vote, could be 2-3, 3-2. That's how we've done it in the past over the last, multiple years. So I just want, we should be clear on how we're doing this before we actually start the voting, so.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yeah, that's correct. And to answer Mike's question, we have a pool of applicants. The 4 people are applicants. We have 2 positions to fill. Each position is going to be voted on separately. For each position, there should be nominations. So if all 4 were to be considered, if we wanted that, all 4 would need to be nominated, or we can nominate 3. I mean, any board member could nominate more than 1 person. That's the process we put in place. We haven't had to face this year.
I know.
This is the first time, but that's the way we set it up.
So then, to be clear, if we have 2 nominations for the first one, and let's say it ends up 4-1,
Yeah,
the 1 is still eligible to be nominated for the
Correct.
second position?
yes,
Correct.
Yes.
absolutely,
Correct.
yes.
Okay, we'll poll the committee.
Do,
Yeah.
I'm perfectly willing to restart this, so now that we have the process.
Well, I think we have 2 names, and
Okay, that's
and
fine.
we should just state who we're going to vote for in the first round here.
As long as everybody's clear on the process.
But, yeah. Mr. Nacastro?
David Owens,
Ms. Davis?
David Owens.
Mr. Shell?
David Owens.
Mr. Metters?
David Owens.
And the chair says David Owens as well. Mr. Shell?
Mr. Chairman, I nominate William Schultz. I move to appoint William Schultz to the Airport Commission until June 30, 2025, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Mr. Nacastro?
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Peter Donovan for this position.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay. Mr. Nacastro,
Peter Donovan,
Ms. Davis,
William Schultz.
Mr. Shell,
William Schultz.
Mr. Meadows,
Peter Donovan.
and the chair says William Schultz. So Mr. Schultz and Mr. Owens have been appointed to the Airport Commission. Congratulations. We had 4 excellent candidates. Next up is the Water Sewer Advisory Committee. We had interviewed William Cook, Bruce Bogardus, and Jeff Colby. Most recently, we have three available slots and 3 wonderful candidates. I'll entertain motions to appoint. Mr. Nacastro.
Mr. Chairman, I intend to support the appointment of all 3 of these. We have 3 different terms here. I'd like to throw out a consolidated motion, depending on what folks think,
Yep.
which would specify the following terms. So I would move to appoint the following individuals to the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee until the following terms, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed. First, Jeff Colby, for the term that would expire on June 30th, 2025. William Cook for the term to expire on June 30th, 2024. And Bruce Bogardus for the term to expire on June 30th, 2023.
I would second that.
Mr. Shell,
Aye.
Ms. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Thank you very much. Traffic Safety Committee, we have 2 vacancies. We have an alternate as well, and Ellen Mark Zion interviewed on July 28, 2022. A motion to appoint?
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman,
Shell.
I move to appoint Ellen Mark Zayan to the Traffic Safety Committee until June 30, 2025, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
And that's the full, Yep.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Nacastro,
Aye.
Ms. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Shell,
Aye.
and Mr. Metters?
Aye.
And Mr. Dyken says aye as well. Thank you very much. The next item is signing our state primary warrant. Okay, we vote, let's take a vote to sign it.
I move that we sign
Thank you,
the
Mr.
state primary warrant.
And a second.
Second.
Thank you.
I assume this has to be unanimous.
It does indeed.
Or you just don't sign.
Mr. Metters,
Aye.
Mr. Shell,
Aye.
Ms. Davis,
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Thank you very much. We are now going to convene a meeting of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees. I see Mr. Bruce Bean here, and I think we have Megan Sturry online, I do believe.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
is it appropriate to move to close this meeting, to adjourn this meeting?
I think we continue this meeting until we adopt the minutes as a select board along,
Oh.
and then we'll close it after that and then go to executive session. That's okay. So let's have a roll call for the Affordable Housing Board of Trustees. Mr. Nacastro,
Present.
Ms. Davis,
Present.
Mr. Shell,
Present.
Mr. Metters.
Present.
Mr. Dykens is present, and Mr. Bean. And Megan Story online.
Present.
Thank you very much. Okay, the first item of business is to adopt the minutes of February 10th, 2022. Accept a motion to adopt those minutes, please.
So moved.
Okay, and
Second.
any comments, suggestions, or edits on the minutes of the meeting of February 10th? They're in our package. Hearing seeing none, I'll take a vote. Mr. Bean, what say you? Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Shell.
Aye.
Mr. Meadows.
Aye.
Chair says aye. Megan.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Mr.
We'll
Chairman,
take a
could
motion.
I ask a question, I guess, of Shauna? So recently, we approved a whole bunch of executive session minutes for the select board, and we're going to do that on a quarterly basis. Are we up to date on the affordable housing executive session minutes? And can we, at least at staff level, have those looked at each quarter in terms of what might be presented to the Affordable Housing Trust for approval?
Yes, the most recent discussions that have not come to closing yet would
Yeah.
not be releasable until that occurs.
Right. I just want to make sure we have the process in place so that we're not faulted for
Yeah, and I haven't forgotten that we want to look at them every quarter, so I've got
Yeah.
that baked in my pea
Yeah.
brain that we're going to look at them every quarter.
Okay,
so.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so I'd like to convene an executive session here. Mr. Nicastro, typically you are the one that reads these motions.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund Board of Trustees go into executive session under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 21, Numbers 6, to consider the purchase, exchange, taking, lease, or value of real property, parenthesis, 0 Meeting House Road, close parenthesis, if such discussion may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the governmental body with no return to open session.
Thank you, Mr. Nicastro. Mr. Bean, please say aye.
We have a second?
A second.
Second.
Okay, yeah. Mr. Bean? Aye. Ms. Story?
Aye.
Mr. Meadows?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nicastro?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. And then now we'll adjourn the Board of Selectmen, Select Board.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Motion to adjourn, Mr. Nicastro, what say you?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Mr. Meadows?
Aye.
And Mr. Dyken says aye as well. Good night, Chatham. We're in executive session. Thank you.